The best part about being an entrepreneur is my life is better than Netflix. I literally have seen some of the craziest, wildest stories of all time. I'm like, this is better than fiction. I'm like, did this deal just take this kind of turn? Like, how did this happen?
Whoever's listening to this, I want you to hear that again. $699 million raised. And I definitely want to dive into that because I don't know how to raise money at all. And the fact that you know how to raise that kind of money blows my mind. And welcome back to Rise Podcast, Life Stories of Accomplished Individuals. As always, I want to thank you guys for being here again with me. I feel it's been a couple of weeks since I recorded one of these, even though you guys are seeing them every week on schedule. But today's a really special day because I have someone with me who we've known each other for a while and our paths have crossed several times. And we have today Michele Romanow with us. With it. We have Michele Romanow with us. How are you, Michele? Romanow, I got it.
Gary Lipovetsky.
How's it? Gary Lipovetsky. Oh, now I feel bad because I feel my last name is much harder to say than yours, and I messed yours up, but you got mine right.
We got these Eastern European last names. They have skis in them. Exactly.
We do. Remind me again. What's your, before we kind of jump into all of this, because there's a ton of stuff for us to talk about. Remind me again where you're from. Like, what's your background? You were born in Canada, right?
Yeah, I was born in Canada. My dad's Ukrainian. My mom grew up in Slovakia, which was part of Czechoslovakia at the time. And I grew up here. I was born in Calgary, and then I spent 6 years of my childhood in Saskatchewan. So I always felt like I was kind of raised pretty close to a farm with just really hardworking, salt-of-the-earth people, and learned that work ethic, very, very early in life.
Wow. So you and I have, well, I mean, we have quite a bit in common because
Totally.
I'm actually Ukrainian. I was born in Ukraine. So me and your dad are from the same place. And I actually lived in Calgary between the ages of 3 and 11. So when we first came to Canada, we lived in Calgary, and I lived there between the ages of 3 and 11. And my grandparents came shortly afterwards when they immigrated from Ukraine. So that's a really funny coincidence. Michele, I want to provide context for my audience. I think most of the people who are watching this podcast know who you are. Respectfully, I think they know who you are. Sorry, hold on a sec, guys. I think we froze. No, Michele's back. So they do know who you are, but I've prepared a little bio for you that I want to read because I want to lay out some context before we jump into your story. So Michele Romanow is a Canadian tech entrepreneur, venture capitalist, and television personality who started 5 companies before her 33rd birthday. When she was 21, while studying in university, she launched her first business, a coffee shop. Michele then went on to be the founder of Evandale Caviar, Bytopia.ca, which is my favorite one, and we'll talk about why afterwards, and Snap Saves without raising any external capital. So she founded those 3 organizations without raising any external capital, and I can say that is a very hard thing to do because I've done it myself, and we're going to jump into that a little later on. Fast forward a few years, Michele is co-founder and executive chairman at ClearCo, an organization providing startups with alternatives to VC funding, and that has to date, and this information actually may be dated, to date has raised almost $699 million. Guys, so whoever's listening to this, I want you to hear that again, $699 million raised. And I definitely want to dive into that because I don't know how to raise money at all. And the fact that you know how to raise that kind of money blows my mind. And she's raised that money from famous investors such as Intuit and SoftBank, among others. She led ClearCo to become the world's largest e-commerce investor, backing over 7,000 different companies in all 50 US states and 10 countries. Also, and this is great, also ClearCo has backed 25 times more women than the venture capital industry average. And I've got more. She is the youngest cast member of the Canadian reality television series Dragon's Den, which was the original concept that America's Shark Tank is modeled after. Michele has been featured in Forbes, the Financial Post, Financial Times, BNN, Bloomberg, CTV, the Globe and Mail, Beyond Fashion Magazine, Toronto Life, Business Insider, and many more. Michele, I want to read an excerpt from the link from your bio, from your LinkedIn bio, which it was very profound to me, and I really related to it. So here we go. And then we're going to get into it, Michele, I promise.
Yeah, no, this is amazing.
Okay. So this is you. I'm quoting you right now. This is your bio on LinkedIn. Ferociously committed to helping entrepreneurs around the world. Believer that the world's toughest challenges can only be solved by entrepreneurs. Committed especially to helping the founders who didn't go to the right schools or grow up in the right families or look like everyone else. Hustle should always matter more than pedigree. I was so taken aback when I read that. It meant a lot to me, because I feel that in today's kind of landscape, entrepreneurial landscape, and even from before, from my generation, that was the thing, is that, like, you, me, a lot of the people that we know, if you looked at us kind of from where we came from, we weren't supposed to be here. We weren't supposed to be entrepreneurs, right? Like, right?
Yeah.
Am I?
We were not. Again, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I want to jump into your story, and I'm going to be sprinkling in some of the personal history, with you and I. But let's jump back to the beginning. So again, you were born in Calgary.
Yep.
Okay, and you were born now your parents were both born outside. You said your dad was born in Ukraine. So he was born in Ukraine, or he was born in Ukraine?
No, my dad's Ukrainian, was born in northern kind of farm community in Saskatchewan. So he was born in Canada. My mother was born in Slovakia.
So he was born in Canada.
Yeah. So one immigrant parent and one kind of first generation.
First generation, got it. Okay. So, I mean, I have a question, but I think I know the answer, but were your parents entrepreneurs?
So my parents were not entrepreneurs, which is why I think it was so incredible that they actually encouraged entrepreneurship. They didn't really know how to exactly. Like, my mother was a nurse. My dad was, the first person in his family to go to university. A high school teacher told him he was really good at physics, and somehow he stumbled into, growing up in a 5,000 person community in northern Saskatchewan to going to the U of S to get an engineering degree, and then worked his way up in an oil company and did really well. But they kind of taught me, if you wanted to build something, you have to go do it for yourself. And I just remember, meeting Anatoly, who became my business partner for 20 years in undergrad. And he's I was like, well, we got to go do this. And it's like, we had no idea how. So we're like reading the stories of other founders. We're like figuring this out. We're building this little coffee shop on campus. We're brainstorming all of these different business we can start. Like, I have spent majority of my life thinking about opportunity. And I think that not only makes for like a joyful, exciting life where you think about building things all the time, but a deeply satisfying one. And so I am obsessed, as you read, with this idea that, when you zoom out, the best problems are being solved by entrepreneurs, like, period. I mean, governments have invested billions, now trillions of dollars into a problem like climate change. And it's entrepreneurs that have made trucks and cars electric that people want to drive, that, invented the Nest thermostat, which made a meaningful difference on greenhouse gas emissions in the US. Like, all of that was led by founders. And so if we can figure out ways to encourage more people to take the risk, more people make the jump, we end up living in a much better world at the end of this all.
You know what's interesting about what you just said, and it just came to me as you said it, and it is a revelation for me. But the thing is that when people try to solve problems who are not entrepreneurs, they're trying to solve, and I want to make sure I articulate this correctly, they're trying to solve for the problem, for the direct problem. They're going directly to solve the problem, whereas entrepreneurs are trying to solve the problem, and then they add a layer of feasibility to it that makes it profitable and will make them wealthy. So it's that additional criteria of solving a problem in a profitable manner that you can actually scale. So to your point, that whole, the Nest thermostat, which I have 3 of them in my home, so I'm familiar with the product. That product when they did it, they knew that it had to have mass adoption for it to solve the environmental problem. But in order for it to have mass adoption, that means it has to be such a good and compelling consumer product that
such
people
a good
will
user
want it in their homes.
experience. Exactly.
Exactly. Whereas somebody who's only trying to solve for the environmental problem, they won't achieve that scale because they're not building it for consumers, like for consumer satisfaction, for user satisfaction. So yeah, I agree with you, and I never gave it a lot of thought before you articulated it now. But yes, I agree. That is, I think, the key to solving the world's problems. So I think entrepreneurs need to continue to unite and push that through. So you went to the university. Did I understand? Was it McGill? No. Yes.
No, I went to Queens. So I ended up.
Queens.
I ended up at Queens University. I ended up there studying engineering because my parents told me I could study anything as long as it was engineering. So I had an abundance of choice.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Very nice.
Good Eastern European parents. I actually think as much as I make the joke, that was a tremendous background to becoming a founder. I think when you understand applied science and how to build things and how to solve really tough problems, you get such a good problem solving skill set. Yeah. But you also, I think, especially as a woman who are sometimes taught that math should be scary or hard or anything. Like, I had such an incredible fluidity with numbers. Like, I can generally run number circles around people because I just do math in my head very fast and very, very comfortable with that. And I always say business math is not really hard. Like, it's mostly like ratios, and getting things right and gut checking a lot of things, because you never get perfect accuracy in business. But if you can kind of understand that, costs need to be below a third, and this is roughly operating margins, and this is where things go, even if the ratios are close, then you'll end up making money at the end of this. And people, this is not a game of accuracy. This is a game of, you get pretty close, the world happens, nothing ever executes perfectly, but if you're still left with some margin at the end of the day, you can build a really, really good business. So I think those were all really good reasons why starting off in engineering was, I really encourage that, especially for women.
Yeah, I'm smiling because, I'll tell you why I'm smiling. I'm smiling because everything you're saying is resonating so true for me. But I haven't contemplated it before. So as you're speaking about it and as you're articulating it, I'm making the connection. Yes, that's how it is. Yes, that's how it is. Yes, that's how it is. Looking back at my own experiences, that's exactly right. So no, I agree with you. And look, I think what's important, and I think, for the people watching this, especially if you have young kids or if you yourself are going to school, you need to understand, to Michelle's point, you're not necessarily studying what you're going to be using from a practical perspective, but learning, the basic logic around mathematics, the basic logic around whatever it is that you're studying, and how that applies to entrepreneurship, I think is key. My 8-year-old's always saying to me, he's saying, I hate math. I don't want to do math. I don't need it. I don't need math. And I'm going to play him this video, and I'm going to get him to look at this so he understands that he in reality does need math.
Yeah, exactly. I love that.
You mentioned something to me about your parents, and you said that your parents were very supportive of you being an entrepreneur, and them not being entrepreneurs themselves. I find that the biggest hurdle that people have who are not entrepreneurs is that jump from that secure, day to day, like that secure paycheck,
totally,
to the world of not knowing where your next paycheck is going to come. Even though your expenses are fixed, you don't know how you're going to get paid, how you're going to get paid next. How did your parents kind of bridge that gap between to advise their daughter to say, hey, look, like, forego the security of employment and jump into the unknown of entrepreneurship? How did they bridge that gap for themselves?
Yeah, I think, look, my parents didn't give me any money to start a business. They helped me pay for my education, and then the help was done after that. And, I really wanted them to help, put some early money into any of my businesses, and they didn't. But, they told me that they wouldn't let me starve. So I knew if things got really bad, I could move back home and eat a bunch of ramen noodles. And, what I thought I think the most important thing you have to tell yourself is every day that goes on from today, this gets harder, not easier. It's just like you're the most beautiful you are at this very moment in time. You're gonna be a day older tomorrow and a year older tomorrow, right? Like every day you don't take a risk, it becomes harder and harder to do that. And so when you're really young is I believe when you should be taking a ton of risk. And I mean risk within reason and business risk, right? You should be betting on yourself. You should be trying to build a company. You should be working all the time. Like I think all of those things are so good, and it's never too late to start any of those things. But I think that was, the thing. And then what I also did, like, these are just very practical tips. Like I remember I had a list on my BlackBerry at the time called Emergency. And it was every single person I knew that I could call for a job if my company failed. And I literally had friends from undergrad that I knew and friends from high school that I knew and everyone that could probably figure out how I could get employed somewhere. And I remember on, these dark, rainy days, I would be like, okay, there's 11 people you can call Michele if things get really bad, but just keep going. I think the other thing that I told myself is I always wanted to build something really big, but I planned in pretty small increments. So I was like, okay, get to the end of this month, we're going to see if this product is working. Get to the end of this year, we're going to do this. And every year, if I told myself that ClearCo was going to be an 8-year journey, I would have never signed up for that. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. I don't know,
so
man.
I want to get to ClearCo because I think I want to dive into that because there's a lot of kind of stuff I want to cover on that. But I think 8 years, you think 8 years is a long time for a business. I remember when I was younger, I had a friend of mine whose uncle became very, very successful in frozen baked goods. He made frozen baked goods in Canada and he shipped it throughout the United States.
Always make money.
They do hundreds of millions of dollars. They're worth billions. This company.
Amazing.
And this, so my friend was working for these guys, and also immigrants. My friend was working for them, and they said to him, and they said something to him, and he said something to me, which really it's stuck. It's one of those moments that's stuck. And he said, "Overnight success is 10 years." That's what he said. He said, "Overnight success is 10 years." Yeah. Right. So when you went into any of your projects, what was your kind of timeline? So let's say going into Bytopia, when you started, by that whole daily deal space was accelerated. But when did you? We'll get into that. But when did you think? How long did you think it was going to take to get the kind of scale where the company would be worth something meaningful, where you would have a liquidity event that would be life changing?
So, look, I know that too. It takes 10 years to build something big. There's no ifs, ands about it. I think that mentally, just signing up for 10 years always just felt insurmountable to me. It was just, oh my God, that's so much of a commitment. And what if I want to do something else? And what if I'm just totally burnt out or bored or all of these things? Yeah. And so I think those things are very different. Understanding that it's going to take that long is very different than re-signing yourself up every year for a new challenge, which is, I think, what I was mentally doing. Every year I'd sit down and be like, okay, what did I do that was crazy last year? What do I want to do that's crazy this year? Am I excited about these challenges? How do I add or change to this so I can get equally excited and energized? Because it is a shit ton of work building a business, and you have constant. I mean, I always say a life of an entrepreneur is every week, 1 to 2 things blow up and you lose a whole half a day or a whole day, and you have absolutely no idea that's coming. Your ability to plan your own life and your own sanity is constantly put on hold by some macroeconomic environment, some employee quitting, some just bullshit that just happens all the time. And so I think that starts to wear on you a little bit. And so when you get excited about these bigger picture things, and where you're getting at the end of the year, that really got me re-energized. So even though I knew this was going to take a long time, I was like, you know what, if it's not going well year 2, maybe we sell the business, maybe we get another operator. I would give myself these mental options, even if they were probably pretty small probability and not very realistic to begin with.
But when you think about all the hardships, and you've been, you've talked to the media a lot, and you've been super vocal about the hardships, which I've really respected that about you, Michele, because a lot of entrepreneurs. Sorry, we're frozen again. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Michele?
Yeah, but I didn't hear that whole
I was saying
I've
that
been super vocal about hardships.
You're super vocal about hardships, and I've always really respected that about you, because I feel that most entrepreneurs, especially the entrepreneurs who put themselves in front of the media as the face of their companies, they don't like going out there and talking about their failures. They don't like going out there and talking about every time they slipped up. But you've been so elegant about the way you've accepted it, and it actually reminds me. So in my business with Valeria, we had a clothing line, and it's really interesting.
Yeah.
We had this clothing line, and we eventually we shuttered it, and it was 4 years in the making. I don't even know how much money we lost on it. It was a meaningful amount, and we really tried, and we realized that it's not for us, and we realized that we have to stick to what we know, and that's the media and content and scaling that that whole animal. But Valeria made a post. Yeah. Valeria made a post, and I think this will really resonate with you about failing. And it was literally like it was an Instagram reel of her popping champagne, and in the comment she explained how this is my failure champagne, and she really talked about that, and she really let herself be vulnerable with that fail. And I have to say, that was probably one of the most, that's definitely in the top 20 posts that she's ever done in terms of views and engagement and performance.
Wow.
And millions of people saw it, and thousands of people engaged with it. And that's really interesting. And I feel that owning that, and again, you've never shied away from the media to talk. And I mean, I think, look, Clearco is an example. I mean, and I have to say, and can we talk about Clearco?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So with Clearco, I understand when things went kind of not the right way. I understood that it's market conditions. I understood this isn't something that Michele did wrong, or this isn't something that this wasn't an operational failure. And the thing is that for you to kind of own that, I think is great. So I really respected that when you came out and you talked about that. Where are you at now with Clearco? Do you want to maybe tell people kind of what happened? Because I'm talking because I'm familiar with it.
Of course, no. I'm more than happy to put kind of some of this all in context. So look, Clearco started 8 years ago. We've become the largest e-commerce investor in the world, as you've seen. $5 billion have been deployed to 10,000 different companies. I mean, the size and scale of the business that we have built is pretty unrefutable. We started a model out of, Andrew's in my apartment in Toronto that is now being used worldwide to fund founders. I think that's a tremendous accomplishment. Yeah. I think it's tremendous Canadian achievement. And we had a really rough last 18 months because we have a business that's reliant on interest rates. Instead of taking equity in founders' businesses, we give them, capital as a rev share. And so that meant our cost of capital went up. We were doing that at the same time that we had expanded into 10 countries, which is what everyone wanted, 6 months before, and what no one wanted as we were going through an economic contraction.
Sorry. One second. When you say what everyone wanted, I want to be clear about who you're talking about. You're talking about your investors.
Oh,
right.
Your investors. Yes. When investors are putting pressure on you to grow, we had gone into, and look, a lot of business is about timing. And so sometimes you just don't quite get the timing right. Everything was, growing very quickly. And then, there were challenges in the e-commerce space. There was challenges with interest rates, and there was challenges because we had grown really quickly. Yeah. And so we had to take a step back and pause. So, and not pause in the business forever. Just, we had to restructure some of our financing and facilities. We had to, get out of countries that were no longer profitable for us to be in. And you don't get to just be a leader when the sun is shining. And trust me, it's really hard to be a leader when the sun is shining, period. Because when the sun is shining, everyone wants more money for everything. And you're trying to grow so fast, and just to hold control of the tiger on the tail is hard. And then you take that same tiger and you go through a downturn, and it is so difficult. And so, we adapted and changed our models, and the company is now doing really well again. But it took that period of time. And the question, Gary, is like, well, why did I share all of that? And I think it's because of what you said at the beginning. Like, if I ultimately have a mission to create more founders, I'm going to be really honest on what this job takes. And this job is not like, we had an idea and it all worked out. We had an idea. The first 7 ideas didn't work. The 8th one actually worked. And then we almost lost the company 62 other times along the way. And the reality is that is the story of Nike and Apple and McDonald's and every single brand that people look up to. It's just not the Instagram short version of that story. And so I always think it's my job to tell people that it's hard and they can do it, versus it's going to be so easy and you're on this path alone, because you're largely alone as a founder. And you're like, well, why the fuck is my journey so different? And anyway, I love what Valeria did. I think there's a great Russian saying that says, those that don't take risks don't drink champagne. And it should apply in both cases. You've heard this one too.
Те, которые не рискуют, не пьют шампанское. Yes, I'm very familiar with it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, I mean, you should do it in both occasions, right? If you took a risk and something worked, you should have a giant celebration and share that with everyone in your friends and your community. And if you tried something and it didn't work, you should applaud yourself for taking the risk.
Yeah, this is such an evolution.
Because there's not enough about that.
Yeah, Michele, this is such an I apologize for interrupting, but this is such an evolution because, I think I'm probably one generation behind you. I think I'm old. I'm older than you, and I'm a generation behind you. Slightly, yeah. So I'm a generation behind you. Valeria, I think you're maybe a couple of years older than Valeria. So you guys are more in that same entrepreneur generation. So the observation that I can make kind of, from my position is that the mentality that I had, because I didn't have the internet, right? I didn't have the internet at the scale that it is now. I didn't have this kind of global consciousness and a massive amount of information where I could tap into an entrepreneur like you who had experienced. Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, global consciousness.
I didn't have insight into the journey of an entrepreneur like yourself to give me that guidance. Yeah. So we were winging it. So when we failed, I felt embarrassment. When we failed, I felt like the weight of that on me. Whereas what I'm seeing in your generation, you, Valeria, our CEO, who's she operates like our media company. Is that you embrace this, like, because they have access to entrepreneurs like you, and they understand and they can read about what's happening with ClearCode, they can see your interviews, they can now, the attitude that they have behind is incredible. And I find myself like catching up, like I'm talking to them and I'm like, oh, it's kind of shitty that this happened, and they're like, yeah, so what? Like, let's just keep going. I'm like, all right, let's keep going. It's great.
Let's just keep going.
We just keep going.
What else are we gonna do? Like, we're gonna cry over spilt milk. We're gonna cry over interest rates. Like, I got real things. There's real problems in this world. Interest rates are not the one I'm gonna cry over.
You know what?
So I think.
No. You think? Yeah, no. I'm excited to talk about a lot of things. So I don't mean to interrupt you, but no. Look, you have to be resilient. You definitely have to be resilient. But I want to go back to when I first heard of you. So when I first heard of you, you were my competitor, and you were actually like you and I never talked when we were competing. Like, we never actually, like, I don't think we ever met. No. I remember the first time we met. Do you remember the first time we met?
Was it through like Valeria when you had just gotten engaged?
No. I think it's the first time we met.
You gotta remind me.
What I'm thinking of, but it may have been the second time we met. But I think it was the first time.
Come on, don't freeze.
You ready?
Okay, you were like, I'm gonna tell you, and then it froze, and I was like, come on, you gotta tell me.
It's at Dragon's Den. You and I both auditioned or read or whatever at Dragon's Den. And I remember, meeting you. I remember meeting you and feeling very that we had. I knew who you were, and so I either knew who you were because maybe we had met somewhere in passing. I think Anatoly I had met. Yeah. I think I had met Anatoly. I think that's what it was. And he had told me about you, so I kind of felt like I knew you almost. Yeah. And then we met. We were both called, and we both got the call from CBC for Dragon's Den, and we both spoke. And I remember we were both on the sound stage, or that, this whatever stage they use, and we both we had like these entrepreneurs come in and stuff, and we did the whole thing. And I remember afterwards, you obviously got it. I did not. They didn't call me back. And I remember thinking it was so like good. Like I was so happy that you had gotten it. I was kind of neutral about it. Like I didn't go in there with the intention of getting it. Like I didn't go in there thinking I thought this is like, I'm just doing this for fun. So I didn't really have this intention. But when I saw you there, I felt it was a really good fit. I felt like you were like the correct fit for that. Do you know who else was there who I've actually become really good friends with?
Who?
Matthew Corin. Remember Matthew Corin?
Oh, I love Matthew. Yeah. I was on Matthew Corin's board of Freshly for years. He's an amazing founder. I have tons of respect for Matthew.
Yeah, he comes down to Florida sometimes, and we spend time together and we hang out. We've become close. He's such a good guy. So okay, let's go back to kind of the first business, because I want to go back more. Excuse me. I want to go back more into your roots, because I think a lot of the times, it's nice and it's fun to talk about businesses when they're already at scale and how awesome it is, or how stressful it is to manage a business with hundreds of employees doing, managing billions of dollars, and that's great. But I want to kind of get back to some grassroots, because the people who watch this, a large portion of the people who watch us are trying to figure out, how do I start? How do I start that first business? You started multiple businesses with no money. Your parents didn't give you anything. Yeah. So I'm trying to understand. Yeah. I remember how I did it, but this podcast isn't about me. This episode is about you. So, your first one was the restaurant. So let's talk about that one. How do you open a restaurant with no money while you're in school and likely with no employment?
Yeah. Honestly, I've done like dozens of podcasts and no one's ever asked me this question. This is very tactical and very important. Yes. So you learn very early that raising money is exceptionally hard. Mm-hmm. And that also gives you an incredible ability to make dollars stretch way further than you think. So the tea room was on campus. I wanted the university to sponsor it. I ran around to every single student group and tried to collect $5,000, $10,000 checks. I did a big fundraiser. I think I needed like $100,000, and I basically got it in 10K chunks. And so it was like a couple different student groups, a giant fundraiser that we ran. I then figured out how to enter business plan competitions. And if you won a business plan competition, you won like a $20,000 check, which was like a mind-blowing amount of money at the time. And then I created a little bit of working capital by getting the people that built did the construction on campus, or called physical plant or whatever. They basically gave me a little financing deal where I could pay it off slowly. So it was the combination of all of those things. But let me be clear, that took 2 years. That was my entire second year and my entire third year university, was figuring out how to get this money. And then I was able to open the tea room in my fourth year.
You raised money. You raised the money for 2 years to start this restaurant?
Yeah.
See, I could never do that.
I was running around in my second year and then in my third year to go do this. I think I started working on the idea halfway through my second year, so maybe a year and a half. So that's a long time to raise $100,000. I mean, I was also 20 years old at the time, so I can see why no one trusted me or wanted to do this. But it's funny because you build something and then you just immediately start building a track record. So that was the first business, and it's owned by the student group on campus. And so it stayed, and it's still open, whatever it is. How long was I on undergrad? 18 years later.
So was it your, but it was your business? Did you sell it afterwards, or was it part of this? How does that work?
So I did it effectively within the student union, because if it was just my own business, then I would have had no way to continue on doing it. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I effectively did it through the student government on on a campus building that was like run by the engineering society. And so every year students could go work there and it could be maintained as like a business there. So it was a great, like, it was the best first project.
Is there like a plaque? Is there like a plaque in there with like your picture on it or something right now?
I don't know. I think they always message me every couple of years to come back. So I think they do remember. If I ever stop by in Kingston, you got to go.
I'm going to find this restaurant and I'm going to go take I promise you there's a plaque there. And if there's not a plaque there, I'm going to give somebody hell. I'm going to say, why isn't there a plaque here with Michelle's face on it?
And you know that, look, it was a really cool concept. We started, the idea was to create a totally sustainable coffee shop because I was, very skeptical of all this green stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, let's see if you can take a simple high margin business like coffee and make it totally sustainable. And so we were doing things in 2007 that people are still not doing today. We had these giant composters with red wriggler worms that would eat 10 times their body mass. I would have my hands in them and be like, oh yeah, this is the coolest compost. We'd sell our compost to farmers. And we had, biodegradable cups before anyone thought that was a thing. I mean, literally, we're talking about 15 years ago.
And you were operating, Michelle, you were operating this business, or I apologize, you were operating this business while being in school.
In school.
So what did you do? And okay, so here's a key lesson. Sorry to interrupt. Here's a key lesson I want to take out. And a lot of people ask me, how do I start my own business? I don't have the money. I don't have the time. And here's the thing. You didn't have the money. And you didn't even have the time because you were studying. So tell me, but I want to illustrate to people, especially young people who say they don't have time and don't have money. They actually do have time because they don't have kids. They're not married. They don't have, you know what I mean? So they do have time. So tell me what your schedule was like when you were in university for those, few years that you were running this business. What did your schedule look like?
Oh my God. I worked all the time and I worked like a maniac. And so I would first of all, at that point in my life, I wasn't sleeping, which I would recommend. Sleeping is important and really, really important for your body, and your brain works much better. So, don't take this advice, but I was up at 9, I'd go to all my different classes. I would check in at the tea room at noon. And at the end of the day, I remember I would work all night. I'd pull all-nighters all the time. I remember ripping up a cardboard box and laying it down on the floor of my office and just falling asleep in my puffy jacket for 4 hours when I needed a nap. And look, you can always find time, right? Maybe I should be more clear at the things I gave up that people think are normal. I didn't have a Netflix account for 10 years. I don't know any pop culture lines to any movies or TV shows because I never had time to watch them. I just never had time for any of that. I missed friends' birthdays. I missed a wedding once. I missed all sorts of things because man, when you're building a business in early stages and it's in infancy, it takes a lot. I was just extremely disciplined about how much I had to work. And so I think there is this I don't have time, I don't have money. You have that time, right? You have time until the moment you go to bed before midnight to be thinking about an idea, to be brainstorming, and to be calling people to see if there's other people interested in that idea. And you can get on a teammate, you could do these things. And I don't think that I lost a lot of things in my life either. I thought that was all exciting and joyful, and I spent so much of my time thinking about how to build.
I want to interject.
An enormous amount of things that would be normal for people.
Right, but I want to interject something. Something you just said really resonated with me. You didn't feel like you. I don't recall what the exact words that you used, but you don't feel like you missed out on anything. Right? When you talk about this, when you talk about how much work and how much effort you put into this, and by the way, this was just your first business. I'm guessing that the amount of effort for your caviar company and Bytopia and SnapSave, it went up. So you kept working through. But here's the interesting part about what you're saying, and here's what I'm getting from you, and here's what I want people to really listen to and understand is that you're not telling the story woe is me, I had to work so hard. Oh. You're telling the story is, I worked my ass off. And you're doing it, and you say it with a smile. And your story about sleeping on the cardboard in your puffer jacket, you're proud of that story. You're happy about that story. And
For sure.
And I strongly believe that's the mentality that when people ask me, how do I become successful? What do? I don't have time. I don't have this. it's that shift in mindset of wearing that as like, that's your honor, that's your pride. The fact I was up till 3 a.m. last night working shit out. That's a positive. That's a good thing. And entrepreneurs, people who want to be entrepreneurs, they don't understand that. But so I wanted to point that out. Tell me about the caviar company. Tell me about the caviar company, because there was a weird tour. There was something weird that happened there too. And I remember in one of your, I don't remember what it was, but there was something weird that happened there. Tell me about the caviar company.
I just want to pick up on one last thing you said, because I think it was really powerful. So it is a privilege to be able to build. That is what it is. And I think there was look, it's a privilege to be in a country where you can build. It's a privilege to be in a generation. Like, lots of people complain about being a woman and it's like so hard. I'm like, are you kidding me? My grandmother is 2 generations away from me. 2. Like, history's been going on for a lot more than 2 generations. And like, her career options were school teacher, secretary, and maybe a nurse. Mm-hmm. Like, let me be clear. Michele Romanow would have been terrible at all of those professions. like, truly terrible. And so I just am like, how did these cells get so lucky that they showed up in this country, in this time, in this place where I got the ability to build? And the best part of it being an entrepreneur is my life is better than Netflix. I literally have seen some of the craziest, wildest stories of all time. I'm like, this is better than fiction. I was like, did this deal just take this kind of turn? Like, how did this happen? How did this happen? This can't even be real. I have days where now that I should have slightly more time, I could watch Netflix, and I'm like, my real life's crazier than this stuff.
That's awesome.
So
That's
again,
awesome.
None of this is a knock at TV. It's the perspective you build when you take big risks. And some of those big risks pay off big, and some of them, are pay off in a giant disaster. But all of them are extraordinarily entertaining. I can give you that much. This is not a boring life.
This is awesome. This is awesome what you're saying.
That perspective.
Yeah, you know what? It's awesome what you're saying. No one's ever articulated, like, honestly, Michele, this is one of the most fun podcasts I've ever done. This is like my 25th recording. Look, it's also, you and I know each other too, and we've got some history, but it's amazing the way that you put it, and the enthusiasm that you have for the absolute chaos that is entrepreneurialism, and comparing it to, like, this is your form of entertainment. Like, I don't know, torture is your form of entertainment. Good for you. Yeah, there's probably some truth in that. People talk about you have to stay positive. Like, people say, oh, you have to have a positive attitude. You took that concept and you just like put it on steroids. Yeah. Because to be positive about the chaos that is being an entrepreneur, it's funny because early on, so I want to give you a little bit of background kind of story with me and Valeria. So Valeria was 26 when she started making content. And when she was in that same year, I said to her, look, this is a business. Let's make a business. And she goes, it's not a business. I'm fooling around. I go, no. This is a business. I looked at the media. I really dug into the data. Yeah. Well, at that, and somebody sent us like a check, right? So I understood that, okay, there's something to scale here.
You're like, where did this come from?
Right. So that's a whole other story. But my thing with that is that, this is Valeria's first business venture. I mean, she was a model before, but this is her first actual business venture. And I catch her sometimes because she doesn't have the context of being an employee. She doesn't have the context about building a business and failing, right? Her business succeeded. Her first business succeeded out the gates. She also had me as a partner who has a couple of years on her, right? Yeah. But the point is that sometimes when things get hard, and things have gotten hard with the business. Now is one of those times because of the media and what's going on in the world. But we've had several, a lot, as you can imagine. Even it looks like it's all rosy when you look at an influencer and you look at all this content that they're putting out. They're dancing around, but there's a lot of complexity to it too. And whenever it's gotten difficult, I kind of look at her, to your point, and I say, do you stop for a second? Look what we're doing. You're literally like you're like a celebrity, and you're getting paid, and you're having fun. And so in the 10 or 15 or 20% of the time where it's tough, so what? And I had to say that a lot to her in the beginning, and a lot less now, because now she gets it. Yeah. Now she's gone through it. Yeah. And now she's like, when we have a bad day or some shit goes down in business, or I don't know, like I was going to say we have like something bad happens with one of our brand partners, but it really doesn't because we're really good in that department. But when something bad happens in general, and it's just like, now we look at each other and we're like, whatever, like, so what? Like, tomorrow's another day. This is great. So that's, I love you equating this hardship to like entertainment. So like, you know what? Fuck Netflix. We don't need Netflix. Let's just go be entrepreneurs.
In real life, this is crazy. And it's so true. And look, I have had some incredible hardships, and I think there's been incredible moments where I like thought and knew businesses were just going to completely fail. I mean, we had one problem at Bytopia, back to the daily deal space, where we had a deal that went wrong, and I remember getting on the phone with PayPal, and PayPal's like, "Well, you're personally liable for like the millions of dollars you've processed."
Was it the butcher? Was it the butcher?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sorry,
no, I remember this.
Was it Michele? Was it the butcher?
This was the meat guy.
It was the meat guy.
Yes, of course.
Okay, I did the same deal with him.
And of course, we all did the same deal. We all got fucked by this guy, and I have my payment processor telling me that I'm gonna have to pay them $1 million, and I'm like, I have $10,000 in my bank account. Like, my parents can't pay that. Like, I'm gonna have to declare personal bankruptcy. And I remember that August, like waking up with cold sweats every single night at 4 a.m. Like, you remember how stressful this was. This is enormous. And you guys were bigger than us. So this had a huge effect on our company. Like, I thought we were going to lose everything. And every day I'm like, okay, just show up, and you just like fight another day, and you just like figure out one more deal and how to work yourself out of this.
Yeah. And
it gave me, I remember getting out of this scenario finally, where I didn't have to pay out this personal guarantee. We negotiated with PayPal. We got through the customer issues. And I just remember being in my apartment one night and being like, wow, did that build like Teflon around me? Like, then something would go wrong and I'd be like, oh, this is nothing. You know what I mean? An employee that would be really critical would quit, and I'd be like, okay, I can deal with this. Like, because I literally almost lost everything. And that's not happened to me once in my career. That's happened to me like 24 times. And so I think you also become a really cool person at the end of it, because like it takes a lot to ruffle the feathers. Like, I mean, maybe that's the other way to think about it, is like you have seen so much and done so much and tried so many things that it's like, oh, it's got to be really bad for this to kind of hit my radar of making me really stressed out. So I don't know. I think that was like, you remember living through those days. Like, it was super stressful building an early e-commerce company in like 2010, 2011. Like, we were teaching people how to buy things on the internet. People would call our 1-800 number and be like, I've never bought anything. And I'd be like, okay, you have to like download Microsoft Chrome. Like, it was just like wild, the Wild West. But anyway, we had a
lot of stress. We had a lot of stress because for us, you know what? I think that at our peak, we had 400 employees there. Can you imagine that with that business?
Yeah.
It's like it was.
For sure.
I've had
400 employees before.
Yeah, no, I know you have. It's that business in particular was tough because with the daily deal industry, and you and I were in it at the same time, in the same local market. As fast as it just skyrocketed up, just as quickly it crashed. Just as quickly it crashed. Yeah. I said as quickly as the daily deal.
Yeah, just as quickly.
It crashed.
Yeah. The up was as
And I remember I had a lot of stress.
Sure.
I had a lot of stress because we had raised $32 million in that business, and that's we did that.
I remember. And to be clear to this audience, raising $32 million then was basically raising $100 million now. Like, that was a mind-blowing.
Nobody was more. Nobody was more surprised than me. It wasn't a Series A. There was no round. There was no angel round. There was no nothing. It was the first. We funded it. Michele, you're gonna laugh. I started that business with my partner with $30,000. With $30,000, and 12 months later, we raised $32 million on a $100 pre-money valuation. Like, it was insanity. It was insanity.
Oh yeah. That was amazing. I mean, yeah, you guys, it was such a crazy time. And I remember just, and you also have to remember, like, this is a really cool story because Gary and I were competitors, but like, you have to imagine being me then. I'm like, I have a competitive company and these guys just raised $32 million. And you're like, oh my God, like we're totally pooched. But the reality is that no matter how much money you raise, execution always still matters. And I've been the one that has raised the most money and have had, competitors do very well. I've been in the opposite scenario. Like, it's just, when you raise a lot of money, you also waste a lot of money. And businesses that grow really strong just have a lot of discipline. And so there's advantages and disadvantages to both. But I think that, I think probably some of that resonates.
Well, absolutely. And you know what? I'll tell you something. I never took money for anything before then, and I never took money for anything after, ever.
Yeah.
And even now, even though like Valeria's, our business isn't, it's kind of like, it's not a business to be invested in, but there are now VCs starting to circle creators. And now I've had a couple of calls. I've had a couple of calls now, and I'm like, guys, what's your exit here? Like, why we're not going to sell this thing? It's a personal brand, and they believe that there's some. But anyways, it doesn't matter. The point is that if you're taking money, and I think maybe what you and I can agree on is if you're taking money, you're not taking money just to be able to like go in the newspapers and say, hey, I took money. You're not doing it for the clout. You're not doing it to like buy a fancy office, to, maybe, get a really fancy company car. You're doing it because you feel that you can accelerate your business to the point where if you don't take the money, your competitors will come and eat your lunch. So, and it's to get scale to be able to then have a liquidation event afterwards, because that's what the investors are looking into. But okay. So yeah, let me just kind of see where are we off to next. Michele, look, you focus a lot on you've mentioned female entrepreneurs. Like, you haven't mentioned it, but in your bio, you with Clearco, it's 25 times more. So is there a reason you were targeting female entrepreneurs to invest money into, or is it just happened that the industry? You seem to advocate for female entrepreneurs.
No, that's yeah. So I mean, and then I have one more story that I just thought about sharing. So Gary, that happened by accident. I did not set out to build a company that was specifically designed to fund women. I have known that women make incredible founders for a very, very long time and are probably overlooked. But I never expected the number to be that stark. And so, the Clearco model is that we give you capital for your business based on your data. So we don't take a pitch deck, we don't take a meeting with you, and we certainly don't care, who your parents were, where you went to school, all of that nonsense. And so you plug us into, because we invest in e-commerce companies, you plug us into your Shopify data, your payment processor. We see how your company is doing, and then we say, look, we can give you this much capital. And then we did that at incredible scale. And literally, I was like, I got my team, 2.5 years in to be like, well, who are our founders? And literally, they were 50% women. And that actually blew my mind, like, honestly, because it's kind of like, well, I always knew they were great founders. I just didn't appreciate they were this underfunded and they had this many businesses. And so I think that's a pretty extraordinary thing, because women get 2% of venture capital, like, truly today. That is a 2023 number. People have been trying to, fix that for a decade now. And we made, a 20 basis point improvement before COVID, and then it dropped back down again. So look, I think that I think I want, and it's not just women. It's like, I believe that from every walk of life, we should be building a business, because that is actually the only real argument for diversity to begin with, right? It's like, understand something that I understand because of something that just, I know that's different, and build it for everyone. And I've seen that be tremendously successful. So anyway, I'm very encouraged that, that there could be more women that build businesses and also just create, generational wealth. And the other thing is women invest their money very differently.
How's that?
And I think build a lot of very different things. When they become, there's actually some like crazy stats on this. This is something I haven't talked about, but you can go and look at the women that started Ellevest. I mean, women are notoriously bad for investing their money to begin with, but then when women create a lot of money, they have done some like incredible philanthropic projects that have been just very different than I think what a lot of men have thought about in terms of family legacy. And so I think
you think women
too. It's like
you think women, especially like successful entrepreneurial women, do you believe that they're more cognizant of legacy than men are?
No, I think they just think about building things a little bit different, maybe because it's fewer of them. I think everyone at some point in success starts to think about legacy. I think that's just a mathematical number that goes off at some point where you think about, okay, I actually have more money for myself. I have more money for my family. And now I have more money for kids that that could be grandkids that I don't even know I have, right? There's just a math that happens there. I think how people choose to distribute that, how they choose to build. One of the things, so this is actually back to your early question, I really wanted to get here on this one, is that, lots of people are like, don't have enough time, don't have enough money. So to build a business when I'm young. So what I figured out with the tea room in the early days is that these business plan competitions gave away money. And so then I spent the next year, my last year of university, brainstorming with Anatoly, building a business plan and running around every single business plan in competition, like in North America. I think we went to 10 or 12. We won 6 of them. We graduated with $100,000. That $100,000 was the startup money we used for the caviar business, for our Bitopia business, and everything for the first 8 years. And so you can always do that. You can always have hustle. You can always enter a business plan competition if you're in school. And it was really that level of you just need to get out there and try and prove it. And I mean, God, did that make me really good at pitching. I became very, very good at how to present a business, how to pitch, how to think about what investors were looking for. All from, really needing just startup capital in the early days. But maybe back to this concept of women, I just think that everyone, no matter where they're from, should have the opportunity to build. We just get a better world that way. And I don't know exactly the outcomes of what that all looks like, but I know that when you enable the hardest working people to build something, they end up doing the right things in that business, and then they end up doing the right things with the wealth that they generate from that business. Because they know what it felt like to have nothing. They know what it felt like. That is very different than growing up with $5,000 sweaters and silver spoons in your mouth. That is very, very different. And if you look at all the data on that, those people behave very different than the people that made it from nothing.
Then the question becomes is, how do you raise your children? So I have 3 boys, right? Blair and I have 3 boys. So how do we raise our children so that they have that same level of hunger? And that's something that we ask ourselves all the time. I actually have a published child raising expert who's going to be on the show in a few weeks. I'll make sure to ask her the question how we do it. But I want to talk. I want to dive in a little bit into Dragon's Den, right? So when you became a dragon, first of all, were you surprised when you went and you auditioned for it? It's not really an audition. It's it sounds like I call it an audition. I don't know what else to call it because whatever. You just go and you listen to pitches.
That is what it is. It's like a mock-up show. Yeah, you listen to pitches.
You're not an actor, right? So it's not like you went on set and said, "Hey, I'm gonna,"
No, it's.
What? Tell me, when you got the phone? When you got the call, Michelle? When you got the call, and they said, "Listen, we want you on the show." What went through your mind when that happened?
Well, there's a slightly bigger story there. So when I got the call to go to the audition, I was like, you have the wrong person. I genuinely thought they had the wrong person but I was like, maybe I shouldn't tell them they have the wrong person. I should just like show up. So that was like the first moment of like, this is almost an unbelievable situation. Then I get there and like, you remember that everyone's talking all over one another. I was like, I didn't do that well. I was like, well, okay, this didn't work, whatever. The producer comes up to me at the end and is like, hey, we're like thinking of doing this like web series called Next Gen Den. Maybe you can join us for that. And I was like, that is code word for what they tell the people they rejected they're going to do. I was like, okay, forget about it. I didn't get it. Too bad. Let's go eat a chocolate chip cookie and like move on. And then I get this call to do the Next Gen Den show. They have 2 panels of 3 judges. And there's like, I can clearly tell I'm on the B panel, not on the stronger people panel. So I do this web series show. I figure out how to get, you know, like you have to figure out how to speak on TV. You have to figure out how to talk in sound bites. And then I remember getting a phone call like back to back in the morning to join this show and one more show. And it was like one of those things where I was like, how did this happen? Like I was not a TV star. I was like not. And I just remember being like, I still think they have the wrong person. This is still the most incredible thing ever. 100% I'm going to do this and at least give it my best shot.
Okay. So so during Dragon's Den, how many, I mean, I've heard the stats. How many of those deals actually get done? How many deals of the deals that you actually like verbally do on the show, how many of those get done?
Yep.
How many of those actually close? Yeah. How many
on the
close?
show? Yeah. I mean, every dragon is different. My close rate's pretty good. I'd say probably like 25% of my deals close, which is like crazy because like lots of dragons are much lower. And I mean, I think I have 40 to 50 companies in my portfolio now. So I've invested in a lot of different startups. And you know, what it is like at the end of the day, like Dragon's Den is a TV show. So we come in, we don't get to vet the product. We don't get to vet the founder.
Sure.
We take everything you say at face value, which is what makes it a good TV show. But, you know, then you go into diligence and lots of things change, right? Sometimes the founder has exaggerated numbers a little bit. Sometimes the founder doesn't want a deal. Sometimes we're not uncomfortable or, you know, now that we've met for longer than 45 minutes, you know, there's just not the same energy there. And so really what the show is, you know, if you get a deal done, I have every intention to close and follow up, but like there's just a very normal diligence period that has to be done. I literally and look, I have become closest friends with some of my Dragons Den companies. One of my deals from 7 seasons ago is a company called RV Easy, and they are the Airbnb for RVs. They came on the show with 30 RVs on their platform, and now they have I want to say 5,000, like something that's so crazy. I don't know if that's the correct number, but like they are I don't know, 20,000 times bigger than they were when they came on the show. And like they came to my house last night. We drank beers by the fire all night. Like it was one of those things where like they become my best friends.
I have to look them up. I have to look them up as we're talking about. They must be, excuse me, they must be in the States as well. There's no way that that's only in Canada. They don't have 5,000 RVs in Canada.
Oh yeah. They're the second largest player in the space. They've done incredibly well. And it's a great platform that you absolutely need if you want to go anywhere cool in an RV.
Now I know, because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get an RV and I'm going to take our boys and Valeria, because she's always been talking about let's get an RV and do some like Americana kind of, because we live in the States now. Yeah. Let's do some Americana kind of traveling. Let me ask you something, Michelle. Sorry, here you are. You're back. Okay, so let me ask you something. You know, when you're considering a deal, because now, you know, you're obviously you're an entrepreneur, but you're an investor, and you're an investor on TV, but you're an investor in real life. I mean, you're in 50 companies. You're not just doing this for the show. And I'm assuming that you're doing deals and you're investing in companies outside of the show as well. People who are coming to you directly. What do you look for?
Totally.
Before you tell me what you look for, what is something that someone can say that you will immediately say, no, we're done? What is like the, you know, what is that like? What's the word I'm looking for? Like when you just say something, That's it.
pure,
It's done.
the binary no is, I mean, it's like hubris, right? I think that as soon as you think you are, I mean, you gotta have some confidence and you gotta have some chutzpah, but that's very different than I don't want advice and I'm just, too cool for school. I'm like this job is going to slap you in the face. Let me be clear. Like there's no one that makes this out unscathed. Like it doesn't work like that. Like careers don't work like that. So it's just, I think that's probably like my big turn off on founders. Like you gotta have some quiet confidence in your idea, but you cannot be too cocky or it's very, very difficult to take advice. And I'm also, I'm a investor that's a founder at my core, which means that I give advice on topics I know a lot about, and I really shut my mouth on things that I don't know about. So if I'm telling you something, it's not because I want to hear the sound of my voice. It's because I've actually probably spent $10 million making the mistakes in exactly this vertical of your business where hopefully I can be pretty helpful. So
yes. So in terms of, that's the role you take on. So you take on a role where you invest, but you obviously sit on the board and you're an advisor and you become a friend and you can advise them from an unofficial, kind of position, which is great.
Totally.
But, I'll ask you kind of the typical question. So what is it that you look for?
Yeah.
Because I know for me, when people pitch me on stuff, there are certain things that I look for, not only in terms of the business, but I'm really looking at the entrepreneur and I'm really trying to, get inside the kind of the head and the heart of the entrepreneur. What are some of the things that you look for? What are things that are, that really resonate with you? Because I'm trying to kind of give the audience that value of, if you're going to go raise money, Michele invests. So what is it that you look for? What should they be doing when they're pitching?
Okay, so what do I look for in a deal? I think the number one thing is the person and how that person is connected to the mission they're solving. So I need to know that you care, and it's not just being passionate about a business. It's like, this means something to you. This mission is going to keep you going, and you are a resilient person, because as much as I'm going to evaluate the business and where it is today, that's going to change 5 times before you exit. And so I need to know that you've lived through tough times, that you can do something, that you can pivot. Like that is absolutely critical in when I meet and when I want to see a founder. Basic table stakes are like incredible fluidity with numbers and like really understanding your business at your core and being able to like politely to explain to me when I don't have the right metric, or actually, Michele, this is the way we look at this business, or this is the way we see it as exciting. Those are really critical. The next thing that I really look for is win-win business models where the more you grow, the more you can expand your margin, not the more you compress your margin. So the Airbnb for RVs is a really good example of this, right? That benefits both sides of the equation. If you are one of the 2 million Canadians that own an RV, use it for a week a year, and the rest of the time you'd love to earn extra income on that. And if you're renting an RV, there's very limited options, and everyone wants the same 8 weeks of summer. And so you want more options. And so as you grow these two sides of the marketplace, you get to take more and more margin for doing that versus less and less margin. And so those win-win business models that are in large markets are generally really attractive to me. So those would be kind of some of the things that I look for.
And in terms of the business feasibility, do you obviously lean more into industries that you understand, or are you open to being in businesses and industries that you don't understand? Like, I can't imagine that you had a lot of experience in this kind of Airbnb for RVs thing before you invested into it.
No, I do a lot of things with like a technology bend in industries I don't understand. So I understand what the tech does, but I didn't know anything about conventional RVs. I know a lot about the RV space now, and who makes RVs and every part about it, but I didn't start off knowing that. I mean, look, I did a deal about last mile delivery in space, started by some SpaceX engineers. So I mean, I've done investments kind of all over the place. But I think I like to understand how technology fuels those, and that's where I can be probably the most helpful in getting those businesses to grow.
Gotcha. My final question is very simple. You ready for it? When are you coming to Miami so we can hang out? Okay. Well, now's the season.
Miami as soon as it gets cold here. So I'm sure I'll be back down in November, and I would love to see you guys.
Absolutely. No, we'll all hang out. If you ever want to get a place down here, let me know. I can recommend some neighborhoods, and I think you'll really enjoy it here. Michele, I really want to thank you for this. This was a lot of fun. Honestly, this was one of the most fun episodes that I've done, and I was really looking forward to this. And I'm happy we had the chance to do this. And I just want to say thanks.
And look, I hope if you take anything away from this, it's that, Gary and I both followed our journeys, didn't come from perfect backgrounds or exactly the right story, ended up doing a lot of hustling and getting to build something really magical because we put our minds to it.
On that note, thank you, Michele. I look forward to you coming to Miami. The three of us are going to hang out, and we'll take it from there. Okay, all the best, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Amazing.
Thanks again. Bye.
Okay, talk soon. Thanks, Gary. Bye.